I'm Isaac and you're watching Isaac's Bushcraft and Survival. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to identify and forage wild edible plants. So let's get started. Okay, so just before I start showing you these wild plants that are edible, I'm first just going to give you a pre-warning to make sure that you do your own research and that I'm not 100% professional. So just make sure you do your own research, make sure the plants are non-toxic. And that's just kind of a pre-warning that I'm giving you before you start foraging your own plants. Just stay safe when you're foraging. But now let's get into it. So the first plant that I'm covering today is cutleaf coneflower. As you can see, it's got an interesting shaped leaf. You got two leaflets, one here, one here. And then you have one large leaf but has 3 points. And this one is edible raw. It does have a few, like if it gets older, it does have a few, not hairs, but kind of a coarse sandpaper texture that can make your throat feel funny or make you cough. So then as they get older, I'd advise cooking them. But this one's younger. I'm gonna taste it here and try to give you the best flavor idea of it. Now to me, it tastes somewhere between it reminds me slightly of green beans, almost like a mix of green beans and carrots with a little bit of peppery taste. It's hard to describe because every one of these wild plants has their own unique flavor. But this one is great for eating raw, putting in salads. It's just a wonderful wild plant, and you can eat quite a bit of it, and it's delicious. You can also boil it, steam it, turn it into tea. The roots are also edible. All parts of this plant are edible. The roots are as well, so you can consume that. Later on in the year, they'll flower or start flowering, and those are edible too. You can make tea out of them. But no, it's just an all-around delicious plant. The great thing about this plant is there aren't any poisonous lookalikes to it. So it's just a great plant to know. Because like I said, I'll be showing you plants that mostly don't have poisonous lookalikes, just because if you're beginning in foraging, you don't want to consume plants that you aren't sure if they're poisonous or safe to consume. But later on, I'll be showing you some plants that have poisonous lookalikes and how to make sure that you don't consume ones that aren't safe. So, on to the next plant. So this next plant you have to be careful with because there is one poisonous lookalike or two that you have to be careful of. The most common poisonous lookalike in its leafing or leafy stage is Lesser Calandine. Which has blooming yellow flowers. This one I know is edible because I've seen purple flowers on it. This plant is also known as wild violets. I'm going to show you a reverse picture of the leaf here. But yeah, this is wild violets. The way you can tell if you have wild violet is the biggest way is to check and see if there are any purple flowers that come up as they bloom. And then you know you have wild violet versus Lesser Calandine, which has yellow flowers that look similar. The other thing too is if you're in an area, like a lot of times you'll find these under arborvitae trees or pine trees too, if you have trees that you planted. They're a common backyard plant. They're also found all over in the woods. But the great thing about these is once you find the spot and find that you have purple flowers, they're the same plant all year round, so they come back every single year. So if you're in an area that has thousands of these or hundreds of these in your backyard and they have like purple flowers, they're edible, and you can come back every single year and gather them because you know that they're the plant that you want. But what's great about these is they're kind of similar in flavor to lettuce. They don't have a ton of flavor. Like I said, they remind me, trying to get the flavor right here, but they remind me of lettuce. the main part of the wild violets that you shouldn't consume are the roots, because the roots are considered toxic, as well as the seeds. And the seeds are under the base, around the base of the plant. They aren't here right now. They usually come during late summer to fall, because right now is early spring when they're just coming up. But the seeds are these little pod-like things that grow out of the base of the plant. So make sure you don't consume the seeds, because those are toxic, and make sure you don't consume the roots either. And I've used these a lot in tacos. You can chop them up and use them kind of as a substitute for lettuce if you need to. Or a lot of times what I do is use them as a mix with lettuce. It's a very good plant. It's got a lot of health benefits. It actually has anti-cancer benefits. It's very anti-cancer. Helps with actually helps lessen the duration of cold significantly. Because there was a time where I had a cold and I took a whole bowl full of these plants and ate them, and I got better within 2 days versus one of my siblings who had to deal with a cold for about a week or more. So it will lessen the severity of colds, the duration of colds. Heck, it might even make you more immune to colds. But it's just an all-around great plant to know. Like I said, it's got good flavor. Some of these plants I'll be showing you today don't have the best of flavor, or, I mean, I still like them, but you guys probably would not, because they're more bitter, they have harsher tastes. You might find them unpalatable, even though they are edible, because there's like 4 types of plants. There are those that are edible and taste good. There are those that are poisonous, that you cannot consume. There are those that are not considered edible, but also not poisonous. They're just not a traditional food source. And then there are those that are edible, but they aren't palatable, meaning that they're too bitter for you to actually eat, or too bitter for the average person to consume. So I have one more plant that I'm going to be showing you, and then that'll be the end of this video. Now, the last plant that I have for you today is a phenomenal plant that you guys have to try. It's found a lot commonly around the edges of rivers, in wetlands, lowlands, forests, in areas that are wet, and it's called garlic mustard. What's great about these is they have a garlicky mustard taste. I don't even have to eat it because I already know. I've already tasted it earlier, so I'm not going to eat it on camera, but I've also eaten it earlier, and it tastes very garlicky. And it sometimes can be slightly bitter, but mostly garlicky, mustardy. The great part about garlic mustard is that the roots actually taste similar to horseradish, or similar to wasabi, which is great because you can use them for a lot of different dishes and a lot of different purposes. So that's what's great about the roots here. They work great for a lot of different cooking and food preparation. This is absolutely delicious and phenomenal of plants to put into eggs. As you can see, this is getting to be in its flowering stage. So you have these little curved, not barbs, but you know, curved pieces on the leaves, and then they have their flower. When it's younger, their leaves look kind of like this, or like that one right there. What's wonderful about this plant also is that there are no poisonous lookalikes. So it's a wonderful, amazing plant. I can't stress enough to try it, because wherever you use garlic in a dish, you can use this plant as a substitute. It just is phenomenal. At some point later on in these videos, I'm going to be trying to cook maybe some gourmet food of some sort with just wild greens as the seasoning or the flavoring. So stay tuned for that. That'll be interesting. Like I said, this doesn't have any poisonous lookalikes, so it's a great plant. Like I said, the biggest use is in culinary cooking. You can maybe make a tea out of it, but there are just some plants that are not as good as others for making teas and other things. Another thing with the other plants is like I said, the wild violet that I showed you earlier is one that you can find almost everywhere in your backyard, as well as in the woods, because it just grows everywhere. You'd probably even find it in your garden. You can use the flowers. Like I said, you can actually use the flowers to put in a lemonade and make it purple pink lemonade. They're just a great plant to do. So like I said, you got to know these plants. They are great. And even if you don't use them just for the flavor part of them, if you're in a survival situation, these plants could save your life. Don't ever underestimate all these plants you can find, because I mean, if you look out here, it is green everywhere. And there are surpluses of plants all over the place. There's, like I said, there's garlic mustard, there's wild violet, you know, there's all sorts of wild plants out here that you can find and consume. You just got to know which ones are edible and which ones are poisonous. So yeah, this is a great plant. Like I said, in future videos I'm going to be showing you some more edible wild plants. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing and liking, and leave me a comment of any ideas for future videos, or any plants that you might come across that you try that you like. And I will see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.